So as we know, conflict is a part of life, but how we handle it can either drain us or strengthen us. And research shows that unresolved tension doesn't just wear down relationships. It can take a toll on our health, raising stress levels, disrupting sleep, and even increasing the risk of early death. I think I saw a stat that was we're double or triple the chance of early death when we have this chronic stress in our life about these relationships. But it doesn't have to be that way. And in this episode, we're going to explore 5 powerful shifts that help you approach conflict with more curiosity, clarity, and collaboration. And speaking of conflict, Dr. Teplow, let's start by talking about President Trump and Elon Musk drama that's been making headlines recently. On the surface, it just is a clash of egos, obviously, but underneath, it's a masterclass of what not to do, the escalation, the miscommunication, and zero effort to find shared ground. What do you think about the Musk-Trump drama?
When you said it, let's look at that as like, oh no, don't go there, because that really is the master class in what not to do. And at every point, you said conflict is just, it's inherent in human relationships. We even have a conflict within ourselves. So when we think about the kind of conflict we have in ourselves and then extend it to others, like, well, of course we have conflict. And in terms of the Trump-Musk debacle, the question is, when we come with different perspectives or different perspectives emerge, what do we do? And where are the points where we can make the pivot? And so looking at how that went, whether you just, saw the tip of the iceberg in that whole conversation or that whole blow up, or you were deep into it, you can see at different points along the way where there could have been a pivot. And I hope that after we get through with this podcast and sharing our 5 secrets to effective action, is that you'll notice, there's a point where it could have gone this way or that way. And
that sounds like a great idea. Let's explore those 5 points, and then we'll come back to this Trump Musk drama and see how we might apply them to that situation.
Okay. Well, one thing is, we said we have 5, and right. I think there's always, like the warm up, right? The guy who pitches the ball, he doesn't just pitch the ball. I mean, there's a warm up or the batter, and the warm up, I think the preliminary step in any encounter you have, whether you think it might be contentious or whether it's going to be, the greatest thing ever, is to be very clear about the outcomes that you want. What do you want to take away from the conversation? What will be the result of having an effective or good encounter? And we often talk about there are many paths to the same river. I'm talking about the river, not what strategy you might use, or if they give me 6 of this, I'll give them 5 of that, or I'll give them 7 of that or 6 of that. It doesn't matter. It's what is the outcome, the thing of more enduring value that you want to walk away with. And I think that's the first thing they have to do before you even kick into what strategies am I going to use.
Yeah, so this is the river we're talking about, the many paths to the same river. And often we tell you what the river is, the outcome we want to have, we talk about what difference it's going to make with our clients. And ultimately we talk about how it connects to your values. And that's, one of the 5, part of the 5 secrets, but that's a little tease into it. But, it's really understanding, what do you want out of the relationship, or the conflict is connected to what do you value, and how does it connect to what the other person values?
Yeah, exactly. And so many of our conflicts are with people that we really care about. It could be family members, it can be coworkers, it can be a boss that, it can be, we may not like our boss, but we have a relationship that we value because our job depends on it. And so often we fight the wrong thing, and we don't recognize, wait, what am I going to do to get what I need or want, and at the same time preserve that relationship that's ultimately the most important to me.
You said something there that is something that brings up. We talk about winning the battle but losing the war, and I sometimes view it as where I struggled in the past, or sometimes still do, is being right versus being effective. In business, that's always been one of my challenges. Is with my teams, how do I be effective and not right? Because it's so easy to fall down the right being right path, or not even recognizing which one. And the being effective is really what you're talking about, being that, what that river is. What do I want that outcome to be?
Exactly. And I love that, that have heard, something about right rather than X, but that how do you be effective? It's not about being right. It's being effective. And I think when you ask that, and what do I want to get out of this? What will tell me that I'd been effective? That helps you get to the river and the outcome you want. And before we go to these 5 secrets in action, I have a great example that I think will help you understand, that difference between a path and a river, and also our interest, like what do we want to get out of it versus a position we take. The position is, that the right way to eat Oreos is to take the 2 cookie sides, right? And you twist them so you get the cookies, you can lick off the inside and then you can crunch the cookies. Like, are you kidding? No, it's like crunch into the cookie and get the whole thing all together in the same bite. I mean, how many times have we had a conversation about how to eat Oreos or do brownies, or the nuts inside or just on top? I mean, it's all that crazy stuff. So here's the story. And I get this from Getting to Yes. It's a book written by the Harvard negotiating team that helped negotiate these huge, huge agreements between global adversaries. Here's the story. There are 2 people in a library, and they're both working away. And one of the people opens the window, and the table's here, and they open the window, kind of a low window, and they open the window. There's a slight breeze. Oh, it feels so great to have that breeze while I'm working in the library. However, the breeze also blows the other guy's papers off the table. So then they have a battle. Is it fresh air or is it, still air? And my papers stay, on the table. They go at it, boom, boom, boom. They start causing a ruckus. The librarian comes in, says, what's going on? I want fresh air. And this guy, he doesn't want to put a paperweight on his paper, whatever. And so the librarian closes the window and opens the top window. What's the result? It's that the fresh air comes in, but it doesn't blow the papers off. So they got what they wanted because the librarian was able to identify what the interest was versus the position. So do we want to enjoy our Oreos, or do we have to do it a certain way? There's only one right way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, goes back to what do I want the outcome to be? And if we can both agree on that outcome, then we can work back to find a solution that we can get to from there.
Indeed.
It's like visualizing that what you want your behaviors to be, what you want to be doing instead. How do I understand what that river is?
Exactly. And I think that then that opens the door for a conversation about what these, 5 secrets to effective action are.
All right. So I'm dying for these 5 secrets. What's our first one? Let's start there.
Well, actually, I'm going to go with the last one. So this is number 5, but that's our destination, right? You have to know where you're going before you can say, oh, make a right turn here or a left turn there. You have to know where you're going. I think that goes along with what we were talking about. You have to know what you want. What do you want to walk away with? So there's you, there's the other person, but you're in a conversation together. So the one of the crucial steps is to frame your conversation as a shared mission. So what do we, as 2 people in this conversation, want to walk away with that we created together? It might have been a struggle, but we walk away and we're both pleased with the outcome. And that can take some work. In that work, we have to keep reminding ourselves what will be meaningful, what will I be pleased to see, what difference will it make? Keep asking that difference, because that gets you to the outcome versus you have to eat your Oreos this way or open this window exactly that way. What is our shared mission?
Yeah, I think that's really what the definition of being effective is being able to understand what do we both want to have to be successful, or to have the outcome that we both want to have. And then that doesn't just but with one person, works in a group too, is what is the most effective thing, and how do you answer the word effective is what is our shared mission, or what is the us that we are going to be having here versus the problem.
Exactly. And I think also that one thing that helps to get to that is don't think big, big, big. Think as small, because sometimes um, we're very far apart in what we want. But if we're talking, we're motivated for something and we both want something. And so even find the smallest shared, I was going to say goal, but yeah, goal is okay. Goal isn't the river, but it's what is the thing that we can agree that would be important for us to walk away with, even if it's, let's agree that no matter what happens in this conversation, we'll meet again in a week. Even that can put you on the same side of the table. And it says that can be even very powerful, because it says, I feel safe enough to make that commitment. I'm interested, I'm motivated, and I'm willing to pay for this opportunity, pay in the cost of my time. So that already starts a powerful sets.
It reminds me of a story about at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, when there was no response from the government, or little response from the federal government, and the activists that were trying to get some type of funding or help from the federal government reached out, and the shared mission was, that's what they did. They made it a shared mission that would say, if there was a flood or a tornado or earthquake, we would come to help whatever community was, agnostic of any other issues. And when they framed it like that, then they could get people to come together and say, oh, right, this is just a natural disaster of some sort. And I don't have to look at whatever the thoughts are behind the specific one. But the shared mission was that as a country, we come together to help our fellow countrymen in a shared disaster.
Absolutely. And that's it. So we know what we want. I mean, that's the first thing. What do we want to get out of this? What will be meaningful to walk away with from this conversation? And then on the other end is to frame the conversation as a shared mission. We're in this together. We each have our independent, unique perspectives, and we share something. And what is it that we share that will be meaningful for us to say that we created together, even if it's as tiny as setting the appointment?
Right, I see why you started there, because that kind of filters everything down. So that was the first one, the shared mission and conversation, knowing what you want. What's the second secret?
Be curious. And that can be hard. Be curious. So think about how little kids, who don't know that bugs are icky or mud can be tracked through and ruin your white rug or anything. Think how little kids are. It's all interesting. And they ask questions and they don't judge and they aren't labeling and they aren't pathologizing and they don't feel uptight and, guilty or whatever. It's just like, what's there? Let me discover.
Yeah, this curiosity came up in a recent conversation with one of our clients who was talking about having stress and anxiety and worry, and part of it came from relating to that's what they came to us for the conversation around. And when we got to it, there was a stress and worry about interacting with his son, and this curiosity part came up, and how to engage with his son. And it came down, to be just, say that I'm curious. Tell me about da 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 da, and that changed the whole dynamic of the conversation from a conflict of, I need to do this. Well, why do you need to do that? Well, but I'm curious. Tell me more about this. Still getting the same information that the person wanted, but it's coming at it from a state of curiosity.
Yeah. And I wanted to point something out, that you said two things. You said why something, and then tell me. And a language, our brain, we have many parts of our brain operating all at the same time. There's that primitive part of our brain that's just looking out. Am I safe from, is this danger? There are other parts of our brain. And, when we hear, why do you want to do that? That really can easily trigger a lot of defensiveness,
Yeah.
And I have to rationale. And so what you said, so tell me about that.
Yeah. And even the I'm starting with the I'm curious, then tell me about it. It's like double lowering the defenses on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. You get there's hit the ball out of the park and there's hit a double. That's hit a double. Absolutely. I'm curious. And think about, our brains are very attuned to prosody. That's tone of voice, your tone of voice, but there's pace, there's pitch, there's, rhythm, there's pauses. So one of the, I think, to demonstrate curiosity and to also evoke curiosity from the other person is watch how you speak. When you take more time, you make pauses. I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more. As soon as you say I'm curious, a person is their brain is going, oh, what are you curious about? And when you take pauses, it helps people feel like they have space. If somebody wants to really get on your case and, it's kind of like up against the wall, they're going to be talking hard. Why'd you do this? What do you think you're doing? Blah, 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 like that. It's really verbally aggressive. So how can you verbally inspire curiosity both in the other person and express it and also communicate safety?
All right, so let's move on to our third secret. We had first one, the shared mission, then was lead with curiosity, and the next one, what's our next?
Clarify the core values that are happening here. So know what's important to you and be curious and ask the other person, we've talked a lot about these things, or I know that you're coming with this, or you mentioned this, or whatever it is, what's important to you? And when person says, well, it's important to me to get this paper signed, that's a strategy or a goal, and then go down. And so, sure. And if we were to sign that paper, even today, what difference would that make for you? So we want to know, keep asking what difference to get to those values.
Because when you get to those values, and that's what I talked about before, it's really getting to the deepest part of that river. And maybe signing the paper right now isn't the strategy that we need to get to that river. Because when we get to that deep river, we all can connect at a certain level. The deep depth of the river is the same for all of us around our safety, security, our happiness, and our joy. So we can always get down to that. So how do we connect it somewhere in there and be able to connect with those core values? So clarify your core values. What's the next secret in the list of?
That I was going to say, if you don't introduce it, I am, because how do you get to the core values? It's to demonstrate and practice cognitive agility. It's having psychological flexibility, and it's also appreciating and honoring that everybody has a reason for doing something. And it's being able to say, this person, nobody's completely nuts, 100% nuts. Somehow, if I'm talking to that person and we're in some kind of conversation with a shared mission, there's part of them that somehow has to make some sense, even if it's only to them. So by practicing cognitive agility, being able to see from another person's point of view, it will get you ahead. Oh, I get it. That's what they're talking about. Or I see why they want that so badly, because, so that you're able to see the person in the context in which they live. You're giving them the benefit of the doubt, and you're also demonstrating the principle that everybody has their good ideas for what they do. And I think
that kind of leads into our last secret, which is, to, either self-talk wise or to do it verbally to someone else, is that old improv yes and versus yes but.
Exactly. Yeah. As soon as you say yes but, you've just discounted everything. So I totally agree with you, but
right,
you've just told the person it's all a bunch of baloney. I don't think, I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Yeah. So practice. You could do it 100 times. Instead of saying yes but, say yes and. Train yourself. The other thing, again, we talked about language. There are a few other things that go along with the yes and. When you're having a conversation with somebody, it can be heated. You say, you're how many times was it, you're just wrong. That's not realistic. You're just wrong. That is a surefire way. And I'm sure, how many times did Donald and Elon say that to each other? I'm sure they said it in much stronger language, but the bottom line was, you're wrong, I'm right. So yep. What do you do? A couple of things is to recognize that it's about you. It's not about them. So instead of you're wrong, I have a different perspective. I see things differently. And that can take you so far. Instead of you're wrong, I see things differently. And I'm curious, how did you get to that perspective that you have? instead of why'd you think that, but how did you do that? And what brought you to that decision? So it's a lot of being curious, the yes and practicing your cognitive agility, seeing things from other people's perspectives, recognize the core values. And so when you say you really want to feel a sense of peace, how does signing that paper that you're pushing so hard for, how does that work into that sense of peace that you want? So all those 5 secrets come together in a single effective conversation.
Yeah, and they really, you can definitely see as we talk through that these really meld together. Like they're not as distinct as you kind of thought they were. They all connect to each other. The curiosity leads to the values, which leads to the mission, which then helps with the cognitive the ability, and obviously the yes and helps with the cognitive ability to get to the values and the curiosity. So they all meld together here in a nice, beautiful soup of wonderful getting along. And soup is kind of comforting and does get you along. So I kind of like that metaphor.
Yeah, and I think that we say it's 5 secrets, but we also want to invite you to be a jazz player and just riff on it, have fun with this, experiment with it, and know that it's that you can improvise, experiment, and mix up the ingredients so you end up with an effective soup of a conversation.
Yeah. So one of the things I think, if we talk about Elon and Trump, and I think that if we look at these different items, one of the things that came up for me is that at one point they thought they had a shared mission and core values that connected, and then which they probably, and maybe they definitely at some level do. Obviously, we all do, but that wasn't forefront, and that led to more "I'm right, you're wrong" instead of the yes and conversation, then which devolved quickly into a big fight. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
And you talked about having different off ramps at the different times. That's when you could see it in different points in the conflict, but at every moment, there's still an opportunity to go down one of these off ramps and use one of these 5 secrets.
Absolutely. And one of the things that helps you is to be self-aware, is to be in the present time, not thinking, oh, he said that 2 minutes ago. What a jerk. How insulting. I'm offended. Is be very much in present time. Notice what's happening inside you, what's happening between you, and narrate. It sounds like this conversation's getting heated. I wonder, how can we take a step back? Let's revisit what we really want to take away from this. Let's revisit what we'd both be pleased to have seen that we've done together. So there are always opportunities, but definitely work in present time with your curiosity and your cognitive agility and all the rest.
Yeah,
and that's why.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's why I think it's so important to know what you want to take away, because that's like your, who you want to be in this conversation. That's your North Pole. Am I being effective, or I'm just being a jerk like they are?
Yeah. And ultimately, I think what did happen in this scenario with Trump and Musk is that there was this moment where it was like, what, let's look at what we both agree on here. We both agree on this, even if it was self-interest was at stake here, because there could have been even deeper, a bigger escalation that could have happened. And some of the story is around the fact that someone had to come groveling back or something. But I think there's a strength in being able to take one of these off ramps.
Absolutely. This idea of, kind of a sense of dignity and, I don't know, it's probably not the right word, but, kind of nobility. I can take the high road here. And so, yeah, and that's cognitive agility also, that you're not giving in or being the victim. You're actually taking the high road and saying, look, we could keep slinging mud at each other and go at it. And, someone will get knocked out. Someone will look like the winner. Someone will look like the winner, and someone will look like the loser. But neither of us are going to come out looking the best we can in a way that really reflects what we care about. So let's get back to that.
Yeah, and yes, you could be right, but you're not going to be effective and agree with what we both care about.
Right. Or as you said, you can win the battle, but you've lost the war.
Right. So I think that's a fantastic place for us to wrap up. If this was helpful, hit like or subscribe. We talk about solution-focused strategies like this every week that help your health and well-being. And we have an upcoming conflict resolution quest that we'll put link in the show notes for. And you can also take our perceived stress assessment to see where you are on the perceived stress scale. All of that will be linked in the show notes. And if you want to learn more about our unique solution-focused approach and book a complimentary coaching session, visit staminalab.io. And list any questions and comments below. We'd love to answer those. Thank you, Dr. Teplow.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time, remember, you are your own lab, you are your own experiment, and you are your own best coach. Be well.